And we are back. It is another edition of Colts Corner with myself, Kevin Bowen, and we've got a newsy one today. The transition tag for Daniel Jones. What does it mean? And, oh boy, strap up these next handful of days for the Colts and trying to get some long-term deals done. Eddie Garrison, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Bit of a time crunch. Dentist appointment for the children here coming up.
Oh, that's always a trip.
Yeah, I can hear Max Bowen screaming already from the chair. We're not even there. Hopefully Chick-fil-A afterwards will be the right, ticket to get out of there seamlessly. Obviously, the news item from yesterday, Eddie, has so many implications on now what, the next week could look like for the Colts before really things start on Monday, and then really what the rest of the offseason is going to be about. So, in my mind, to kind of sum it up, the Colts made a $6 million risk in the transition tag for Daniel Jones and not giving him the franchise tag. Obviously, that eliminates the 2 first-round picks that would come in return if someone were to throw out a ridiculous offer for Daniel Jones. And I actually want to give a ton of credit to James Boyd, colleague who is on the Fan Morning Show with myself and Jeff Rickard. He brought up the analogy with the Pacers and the Milwaukee Bucks from this past offseason. And when, you leave the door cracked in professional sports for another team to potentially enter the fray, you will see some of the more desperate moves you could imagine. The Pacers have largely admitted they didn't expect the Bucks to do what they did, and they did it. Not to say there's a team out there that necessarily will do that with Daniel Jones, but there could. But more than that, by tagging Jones, you now have given Alec Pierce free rein to make the decision that he wants to make. And I think the risk in that and the reward from it is where I struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Of what is the reward in the $6 million? Is it really just that? I mean, Eddie, not to math it up, but what is $6 million of $301 million?
Yeah, I know, right?
That's the cap. I mean, what are we talking? 2%? 1%? It's a very small number. And to take the Pacers analogy one step further, the Pacers made a bit of a risky trade a month ago. The reward...
2%.
2%. Thank you. The reward for the Pacers in that trade, potentially, along with obviously Zubats, is a top 4 pick. That's the reward. What's the reward for the Colts here? Is it really saving $6 million?
Right.
And again, is that penny pinching? Is that the accurate value that they think Daniel Jones deserves? Is that money that they feel is necessary to give Alec Pierce a long-term deal and to check all the offseason boxes? I guess. But that reward does not seem too rich to me. So, overall, before we get into Jones-Pierce, it's kind of my overall thoughts.
I thought it was a bit of a mixture of the DeAndre Ayton situation with the Phoenix Suns a handful of years ago and the Pacers signing him to that offer sheet. It might be a little comparable because maybe Phoenix didn't think there would be a team out there that would sign Ayton to the number that the Pacers did, and it forced the hands of the Phoenix Suns in order to do that. So let's dive into this from the Daniel Jones aspect first, Kevin. 37.833 is the specific number on the transition tag. Is there a number out there that you envision that is too big that the Colts won't match?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think so, but Eddie, we've talked about this with the Colts. Their economic approach is a bit different than a lot of NFL teams. And now, by making this move, you have given teams a handful of days, if they are desperate at quarterback, to try and configure an offer sheet that, again, will be like the Colts forcing them to eat their vegetables. Is there an offer sheet that all of a sudden just, no, that's not the offer sheet that I want. That's not what I was thinking about at all there.
Years or numbers?
Guarantee.
Okay.
That's where I would go. Years, to me, again, it's more of the guarantees. And, with quarterback contracts, we've gotten into the old fully guaranteed phrase.
Yeah.
At times. So, again, I'm not saying there's a team out there that necessarily is going to do that, and we'll obviously see it all play out here over the next week, but that's where the door is cracked a little bit there of you now have to match the offer sheet.
Mm-hmm.
you don't get to dictate terms.
Yeah.
When you formulate your long-term deal, because they still want to get Daniel Jones done long-term.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want $37 million cap hit sitting there for 2026.
Nope.
Because right now the Colts are about $5 million over the cap, which, again, if you want to play that out, okay, let's say you have a cap hit for Alec Pierce for $20 million for next year. Let's say you want Trey Hendrickson and you have a cap hit at $20 million there. Now you're 40-some million over the cap.
Uh-huh.
How the hell are you figuring that out? So that's a conversation I want to get to here in a few minutes. But so that's my question for Jones. I assume they would match to answer your original question, Eddie. But again, these offer sheets can now look different.
Mm-hmm.
And so how you react to that, I think, will be very interesting. Now, in a vacuum, the Colts pretty much said to Daniel Jones yesterday, we like you, but we don't love you. They're not wrong. I mean,
right.
Isn't that how a lot of people feel about Daniel Jones
in
his situation?
I just felt like Jones had all the leverage prior to 4 p.m. yesterday. Now I think he's lost the leverage because the big chip the Colts have that they can play now is, hey, it doesn't matter who you talk to or what number you sign with, we're going to match you.
Right, but again...
But beforehand, it's like, all right, well, you got to make your decision now. Are you going to pay us what we want?
Yeah.
Because you got another guy in Alec Pierce that's worthy of a franchise tag. And we could screw you over by playing hardball here to get what we want. And if you're not willing to budge, then you're going to have to make a choice.
And by the way, thank you, Eddie. We'll throw in Dane Brugler's conversation with the Fan Morning Show coming up here right before Twitter questions. He joined myself and James Boyd down at the Combine. Some great draft combo with Dane Brugler from The Athletic. I think a reminder on the Jones front before we get to Pierce. It's a bad quarterback draft class. It's a bad free agent quarterback class. So again, where are these teams that have some desperation in it? But, Achilles injury, overall inconsistency, he's not probably worth 40, 45, whatever number you want to throw out there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just not the reality of how a lot of this works. I think I said to you last week on the Wednesday pod, Eddie, do you call Daniel Jones's bluff? Is it worth calling his bluff? Well, we got our answer. The Colts called his bluff.
Yeah.
Now, again, how worth it is it? I still stand by I would have tagged Pierce and tried to get something. If you have skepticism about Jones, is he worth it on the open market? Then, to me, I would say, all right, let's play that game and try to get something done. Whereas, with Pierce, I think it's going to be quite competitive.
Now, let me get your thoughts on this because I want to make sure I have this correct because I don't know if many people in our listening audience even know this. Kevin. So shout out to my friend Alec who listens to the pod. He reached out to me last night about this. I asked Joel A. Erickson about it. I asked James Boyd about this just to kind of make sure we're on the same wavelength here. In order for a team to sign Daniel Jones, they must have at least that $37 million guaranteed at signing. So they have to have the cap space available. It's not like in the Milwaukee Bucks situation where they can waive Damian Lillard or waive a player and then generate the cap space. They have to have that cap open when they make that offer sheet to Daniel Jones, and it has to be there in a week from today when the new year starts. It can't be on the 12th or the 13th. They have to have the money on March the 11th,
right,
at noon Eastern,
which is different from Turner. With Turner, there weren't a lot of teams that could get cap compliant. There are a lot of NFL teams currently right now that could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, the desire of 1-2, if you already obviously have a quarterback, you're out there. So, yes, that is a good thing to keep in mind for next week there. So, I think that covers everything Jones related. My thought is he still probably comes back, I guess, to answer it all. But, again, you have left the door cracked. About a $6 million risk here. Is that worth the reward?
Now let's get to the Alec Pierce situation of this. It has seemed ever since the season ended, Kevin, that if the Colts are and were to retain Daniel Jones, then it seems almost likely that Alec Pierce would come back because he made it very evident that it would strongly impact his decision on if he would come back or not. And right now it seems like through all the reporting, whether that's Diana Rossini, whether that's Stephen Holder or anybody else, the quarterback situation for Alec Pierce matters a great deal. And until the Colts get that answered, there's a chance that Pierce could be gone.
If he wants a stable quarterback situation, I'd argue now the door is open for him to be able to find that in several different spots.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at the Colts quarterback situation, I would not call that the definition of stable.
No.
Webster's dictionary, look it up. quarterback situation, put an NFL logo next to the word stable. You're not putting the Colts logo next to it. You're not putting it with Daniel Jones coming off a torn Achilles.
No.
To be honest with you. If Alec Pierce comes back here and he gets other offers that are comparable with quarterbacks that are of different ilk, they might as well just rename the stadium Alec Pierce Stadium. Put him on the JW for the next 3 years for his loyalty with it all. Eddie, you know this quite well. A 25-year-old player with no serious injury history who led the NFL in a very unique stat that is coveted in the league. Big playability, yards per catch is the stat, but again, consistent big play home run ability. That player getting to the open market is so rare in today's NFL. And now he's there. It's his choice.
Mm-hmm.
He can get to the open market if he would like. And at this point, you might as well test it. So the Colts have turned down big offers for Alec Pierce before, trade offers. And now you don't need to apply any sort of draft pick compensation to it. You can compete with your dollars. So
what's his number? What's the number he ends up signing at?
Yeah, I mean, I think the annual value could very well be north of 30. Again, the franchise tag was 27, so it's not like that different. When you consider his age, when you consider the lack of injury history from a serious nature, when you consider his unique trait, and you can make the argument, baseball it up, he showed he could hit a few more singles and doubles this past season. So that is probably the biggest question from me exiting yesterday, Eddie, is now you've put the ball in the court of Alec Pierce's agents.
Yeah.
Alec Pierce does not strike me as an individual that was looking to run from the Colts. There are plenty of free agents around the league that are looking to run from their current team.
Yeah.
Pierce doesn't strike me as that dude. And I'm not going to get into his brother's about to play for Purdue and whatever. He loves the country club of Indianapolis here. And, he's a Midwest kid and played college, 90 minutes from here. Like, I really just feel like he has enjoyed his time with the Colts and is not looking to run at any point. But now, if you factor in a couple things, A, the Colts have to compete on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And B, you look at some of these I think right now I saw the Chargers just released Mekhi Becton. They're now due to have the most cap space in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like north of 90. You don't think the Chargers with Justin Herbert is an attractive situation?
Maybe.
And again, we can nitpick Justin Herbert, but let's not compare Justin Herbert to Daniel Jones.
Yeah, it all depends on how they view Quentin Johnston because he's still there in a similar role.
Sure. So I think these are just kind of questions I have now for the next handful of days is what attractive quarterback situations pop up onto the Alec Pierce radar? Because I think there are a lot of teams out there that probably never thought we'd get to this point.
Right. If you're looking at wide receivers north of 30 mil a year or more, there's only 9 of them. Only 9. And one of them is about to be a free agent.
Yeah. And I think one thing to keep in mind too, Eddie, is, and it's more difficult to say out loud, and I'm zero math expert, but we really should start to think about these things in terms of percentages of the cap.
Yeah.
I mean, the cap just increased by $22 million from last year.
Yeah.
So when we talk about Michael Pittman Jr. with a $29 million cap hit, when that deal was signed 3 off seasons ago, that's a lot different than saying $29 million right now. Where was the cap when Michael Pittman Jr. signed that contract? Probably what, $45 million less than it is now? $50 million than it is less now?
Yeah.
So again, percentages is probably how we have to operate. I'm not going to act like it's not a big number for Pierce, but when you start to talk percentages, it's not as outlandish, outrageous as it sounds. Again, I'll continue to come back to this. I would have tagged Pierce and tried to get something done with Jones. I mean, I guess in one way, shape, or form, you were calling Jones's bluff. And again, what would that long-term deal look like? Because if a team comes with the long-term deal, again, now you have to negotiate on their terms. And I think that is something that also makes this challenging. I get the quarterback position matters more and all of that. I would argue that I don't think your quarterback situation is solved necessarily with Daniel Jones either for the next, 5-7 years, something along those lines.
I know this is very unlikely to happen, but just because it's very unlikely doesn't mean it can't happen. It's probably a 1% chance. There's an avenue, Kev, where neither one of these guys are on the Colts next year.
Right.
Because we've already highlighted with the transition tag, there are no draft picks you get in return if you would have put the non-exclusive tag on it. I don't think there's a team out there that's going to offer Daniel Jones whatever it is, $44 million, and give up the 2 first-round picks. So this is the danger that they're playing with here by doing the transition tag, because he could sign a number and you're like, yeah, I just don't know if I'm comfortable paying him that over the course of whatever it is, 3 or 4 years. And not to mention, there's Alec Pierce who can sign with any team now.
I acknowledge that. I do think the percentage is small, which I think you would agree with, that both are gone. But yes, that is some of the risk. And I'll add this before we get to Dane Brugler and then Twitter questions. Eddie, my next question becomes, what pillar Colts are not here next week?
Right.
Because we just did a little bit of the math earlier. You're a handful of million over in cap space right now with Daniel Jones's $37 million transition tag. Let's play out I expect them to take a big swing at edge rusher. Okay, let's call that a $20 million cap hit.
Is it Osai or is it Hendrickson?
Yeah, I am an Adolfo Owe guy. That's who I like, a little bit younger. Hendrickson, I still got some worry about the age and the hip, but that's a debate maybe for later. But again, if you just play out $20 million for edge rusher, $20 million for Pierce, just calling those 2026 cap hits, now you're like $40 million north of the cap.
Mm-hmm.
How are you getting under? You can only restructure so much. If I told you right now, we had Stephen Holder on earlier, Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman Jr., Zaire Franklin, Kenny Moore. How many of those 4 are here in September?
You said Pierce,
Pittman, Franklin, Moore.
3. I think Pittman will get an extension with restructure.
I would go with 3. I might go with 2 before I go with 4. If I really had to play the math out. If you're planning to make a big splash at edge rusher,
I would swap out Kenny Moore with Grover Stewart.
Okay. Yeah, I can listen a little bit. I think Ballard's such a big front guy, and they have a little bit more on paper at corner. I don't want to act like a lot, but Grover is pretty unique. But again, I can listen to that. I just think I've tried to make sure that we continue to go over this, throughout these last 2 months here, but we're not used to the Colts operating in this manner.
Nope.
It's just not. And part of it is you're starting to pay a quarterback. You're starting to pay a left tackle. Part of it is they pay the other positions a lot more than most teams, running back, guard, linebacker, safety. And part of it is they haven't hit on a lot of rookie contract guys as of late. So you add up all that, and you're in the situation that you're in. Dane Brugler, down at the Combine. We'll play that for you right here.
I've joked here, if you stay in a local hotel, you could, pull the drawer open, and some might, find a book in there called the Bible. Others might find Dane Brugler's Beast, depending on how they like their, whatever coffee brewed. So, Dane, we always appreciate the time. And, I've been teasing you coming on the show here for the last hour. I think you have a strong affinity for some local guys that I want to get into. And when we've had you on the past, local has meant we're kind of going up to Notre Dame.
Right.
But local can be an hour down the road in Bloomington, or, Dylan Thieneman being a Westfield native just north here of Indianapolis. So I guess let's just start with Fernando Mendoza. And I did find it interesting that I was listening to you a few weeks back, and you mentioned that you felt like if Arch Manning, or maybe some NFL people feel, so feel free to correct me,
right,
if Arch Manning was in this draft, there might be a little bit more of a debate at number 1?
Oh, no question. And how much of that is just the name that's going to, be part of that discussion? But the way Arch finished, I think people, and I say people, scouts, people in the NFL, they just see it as a rocket ship. It's headed in the right direction. And he has got a little more in terms of the mobility, in terms of the ability to create those second chance throws. And we saw Fernando Mendoza this year use his legs, especially in the national championship game, to make some plays. It's just a little bit different with Arch. And so Mendoza is closer to his ceiling and what he is as a quarterback, which isn't a bad thing. If you're going to draft a quarterback, especially in the top 5, don't you want to kind of know what you're getting, And so I think that's the sell with Mendoza is you already know he's a good quarterback. You know how accurate it is. You know pre-snap processing, post-snap processing. You have a good feel for all of that, where with Manning, you're betting a little bit on the upside. And so it would be a debate. It would be something that we'd be talking about ad nauseum here. But I'm glad part of me's glad. Part of me wishes, just because this draft could use a little oomph at the top, but part of me's glad that he went back to school. I mean, for most quarterbacks, that's the right move to get better, develop. The NFL is just not a developmental league. So the chance to go back, get better, we'll be talking about him at this time next year.
Well, if you want some oomph, I think you should just go stop by Fernando Mendoza's Friday press conference, and we'll get all the flipping champions and things like that, phrases that he drops. But I know, looking at your top 100 that you just recently put out, Dane, that Omar Cooper Jr. is a player you've been high on.
Yeah.
You got him ranked number 27. Can you elaborate on why you think his skills will translate to the NFL?
Yeah, and I've been talking about him all year as just like what's not to like about this player. He operates mostly out of the slot. Ball skills are fantastic, and both his parents are big basketball players. I believe in this area, just north of here. So local kid, he gravitated more towards football, and the toughness and yak ability. That's what really sells me. You get the ball in his hands, he can break tackles. He will get those hidden yards where it's 2nd and 7 and it's a screen, and instead of it's gonna be 3rd and 2, he already got the first down, so you're already moving the chains. That's where I think he separates himself. And so I think now if you're looking for more of a vertical receiver, maybe he's not as proven in that area, but I've seen him win out of the slot on vertical patterns versus press, but I think the specialized, how you want to really use him, screens, slants, runway routes, opportunities to get him the ball in space so he can create, use that speed, use that toughness. This is a receiver class that's missing maybe a true alpha at the top, but we're going to still see 5 or 6 go in the first round, and I think Omar Cooper's right there in that mix.
I've kind of called him Baby Debo.
Yeah, I can see that, right? Debo, maybe a little more like a running back, where I think Omar Cooper's more like a receiver. But in terms of the ability to break tackles, get more yards than you think are going to be there, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, let's stick with the IU brigade here, and a man that's going to talk to the media here in a little bit is D'Angelo Pons. And we are in a market with Chris Ballard, a very stringent individual when it comes to cornerback makeup. Last year they drafted Justin Wally. James, we were in the draft room. We thought it was a mistake almost. Very foreign draft pick from a height standpoint.
Right.
You have, I think, stood on a table a bit for D'Angelo Pons, despite the height there. How high do you think he could go, and why do you feel like he'll be an outlier based off how many people view the cornerback position?
Besides the size, what is not to like, right? You have to get past the size, and I get it. If he's lined up on the outside versus a 6'4" receiver, there's a mismatch there. There's no way around that. But everything else you love about him, the toughness, the speed. He was a 100-meter track champion in high school, so I think he'll have a nice week here in terms of the workouts on the field. The toughness that he plays with, how smart he is. Like I've talked to him before, and I've really enjoyed our conversations because you really know when a guy gets it, especially a corner. Trent McDuffie was that for me when scouting him that year coming out of Washington. How smart he was about, if they're lining up in this split, we're going to change the coverage. This side will be man, this side will be zone. And how quickly he sees it, and that processing is so important. We think of corner as a stopwatch position, and it is. You have to be fast. You have to be able to carry receivers vertically. But the intelligence factor of understanding route concepts, understanding what the offense is trying to do so you can be a step ahead, Pons has that, and we saw that consistently throughout the season. But it was the same guy at James Madison. He was a freshman All-American, and he was doing that same stuff. So this is just how he's wired. And so I'm going to bet on a guy where you have to sacrifice the size, yes, but everything else I love. So I'll bet on that.
So to pivot a little bit to the Colts, obvious need for them is a defensive end. How do you feel about the depth in this year's defensive end class, considering that the Colts do not have a first-round pick?
Right, and this is music to, I think, Colts fans' ears. It's a deep edge group. My top 100, I had 16 edge rushers, and there were probably 4 or 5 I could have thrown in there as well. And it's like there's not some magical ranking somewhere in a vault where every team's going to be drafting from, and every draft board's going to look a little bit different because of the types of edge rushers. If you're looking for more of an edge setter, you're looking for more of a bendy speed guy, and so I think it'll be interesting to see the order these guys come off the board. who would still be around in the second round for the Colts. But there will be somebody. There will be somebody you can circle and say, if we circle 5 names going into day 2, good chance you're going to get one of those guys.
Okay, I want to make sure we get a couple local questions in here, and we always appreciate your time.
What a difference a year makes, by the way, with talking Indiana football.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, jeez. I mean, good for that program.
I went there. They won 3 Big Ten games in 4 years. Ball State beat them twice in my 4 years.
Gosh.
So I think that tells you everything you need to know. The biggest news item when I was there was Kevin Wilson, their former head coach, fighting an RA, literally a resident assistant there, former RA.
Did he win?
Right here. That's a great sign. I don't know. I think the pocket knife the RA had on him maybe got the win there. Okay, the Beast is coming out when? Do we have a date yet?
It's always hopefully that first week in April. A couple weeks for the draft, and I just give me the month of March to get it done, and then we'll hopefully
your version of March Madness is getting the Beast done. Okay, 2 more local guys I wanted to ask about. Dylan Thieneman, again, Westfield, Indiana, just north here in Indianapolis. You've had Thieneman, I think, pretty high. I think several draft analysts have had him high. Probably going to be a very good tester here coming up. What intrigues you by the former Purdue football player, Oregon product?
Really intrigued by safeties who can do a couple of different things. You want the versatile guys, and I think that's where with Thieneman, and he'll show it here. Like you said, he's going to test well. I think he'll do all the positional stuff will look good. The athletic testing will look good, and you want guys that can play the nickel. You want guys that can play the post. You want guys single high. You all these different, and that's what I think Caleb Downs is a top 10 pick in this draft because all the different hats he can wear. And Dylan Thieneman, I think he has that type of versatility where it's not just he's not a above average run defender and you have to give up a little bit in coverage. He has everything, the total package, and so his coverage ability, especially in man, is what helps separate him. So if I'm looking for someone that can be a true nickel on one snap, but then I don't have to change my personnel packages. I can just move him to, a different alignment. You feel comfortable that he could do it. And so that's why ultimately I think he goes in the first round.
I am an unapologetic Notre Dame fan. I think Jeremiah Love was the best player in college football last year.
Yeah.
Durable, pass catcher, pass protector, home run hitter. Mm-hmm. Look at the Penn State touchdown run from a few years ago if you want to see some toughness in there as well. How high is too high for Jeremiah Love?
Okay, so we know the number 1 pick, right? Fernando Mendoza, I think, is already looking at real estate there in Vegas. And then I think we're on Jeremiah Love watch. I mean, I agree with you.
That high.
You can't draft him too high. I really don't think you can. Now, we could debate about are the Titans in the right roster construction mode where they should be dropping a running back in there. Same thing about the Jets. I don't think Breece Hall is going anywhere, but if they did move on from Breece Hall. I think that's a debate, but if the sell is easy. If you tell me, if I'm a fan of a franchise and you draft Jeremiah Love and I'm thinking, you draft a running back top 5, the sell is easy. You just added the most explosive player in the draft to your offense. That helps everybody. That helps the quarterback. That helps the receivers. That helps obviously the run game. So I have a hard time believing he gets past the Saints at 8.
I've seen the mock of Kansas City at 9, and I'm like, my gosh, can you imagine him in that offense?
Well, and that's another one where could we really see the Chiefs go with another first-round running back? But this is a draft where just draft good football players. Stop talking about positional value. Just draft good football players. So Caleb Downs, a safety. Sonny Styles, off-ball linebacker. Love, running back. Yowane, the guard. Like, these are all really, really good football players. I don't want to hear about chasing upside. I want to hear about the good football players we're adding. And Love, I have a higher grade on Love than Ashton Genty from last year. His grade is closer to like a Bijan Robinson, what I had on him coming out of Texas. So I just think that you can do so much with a weapon like that. Put him in the slot, let him run routes. And he's not just screens, he can run routes. A weapon like that just changes everything about your offense.
Last one, and we'll let you go, Dane. I know you mentioned Caleb Downs, not a local kid, but local adjacent with Josh Downs being here. Mm-hmm. I remember having a conversation with Josh Downs at his camp a couple years ago, Dane, and I asked him, I was like, typical softball question, who's the better brother? And he's like, it's him. He's like, I'm the better receiver, but it's him. So what stands out to you about Caleb Downs and what makes him so unique and different as a safety? Because we know that's a position that, like talk about positional value, isn't always viewed in the same light as others.
No, I mean, when's the last time we saw a top 10 safety? Jamal Adams, right? It's been a minute, and Most teams have that line of thinking, but Downs is just different, and especially in this draft where it's a little bit light at the top. I just talking to a couple teams this week. The most impressive interview. Oh, Caleb Downs. Oh, it's Caleb Downs. I mean, you hear that a lot. Sonny Styles gets some votes too, but Downs has been universally praised for, and that's not a surprise when you think about how smart he is. I mean, he showed up as a freshman for Nick Saban and was the leader of that defense. He's played for 3 different defensive coordinators the last 3 years, 3 different schemes, and he's been a star of all 3. So everything that Matt Patricia did this past year for Ohio State, all the different disguises, the different traps, it's all because you have a safety like Caleb Downs who can handle it mentally. We talk so much about with DBs, the physical ability, and that's great, but having the mental capacity to understand what the offense is doing and then communicate that's everything. And we talk so much about Nick Emenwari for the Seahawks and what he meant this year, right? When you watch the Seattle Seahawks tape, it's Devin Witherspoon that's saying, hey, Nick, you're doing this. Or, hey, Tyreek Woolen, you're doing this. Devin Witherspoon's getting everybody right. When Devin Witherspoon's not on the field, the Seattle Seahawks defense is not even close to the same because of that communication aspect. It's the same thing with Caleb Downs. Having not only his ability at safety, but his communication and ability to get everybody lined up in the right spots, that is something that doesn't show up in the box score, doesn't get talked about enough, but is something that coaches and scouts certainly care about and something that I will separate Downs throughout the process.
Love me some Dane Brugler, so thank you to that conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Eddie Garrison, got a few minutes left here for a couple Twitter questions.
We'll start with Zach. Why is there no real momentum around Riley Leonard when Houston, a top defense in the NFL, was still playing for something in the first half? Riley Leonard was 8 of 13 for 2 touchdowns with a 61.5% completion percentage. I think we all would have signed up for that from a rookie's first career start. So why not build on that at a much cheaper cost than Daniel Jones? Thanks.
Eddie, will they match anything? I assume, but some of the penny pinching, I'm not gung ho on. Now, as far as Riley Leonard, there's no way to answer this question, I guess, without sounding like you're just attacking Leonard a little bit. I said when the Leonard pick happened, this is a ideal quarterback to draft in round 6. Mm-hmm. He has so many traits that you would like, and he definitely has some big time areas where he needs to improve, but he's going to work. And sometimes the day 3 pick is the reverse. You kind of got to coach the work ethic into him. So I just am not ready to say 1.5 games of a 6th round pick is a slam dunk. And I guess it's a little unfair to Riley, but I think it's just living in a dose of reality. There is part of me that thinks this, if Daniel Jones were to walk or it get too rich for him, Eddie, is there any way, shape, or form you could crawl back to Anthony Richardson and you tell Anthony Richardson, you get the first 8 games, or Riley Leonard, you get the second 8 games?
I don't know.
Do you think there's any Colts fans that would sign up for that right now?
I'm sure there's probably.
If you told them the 2026 season would be 9 games of Anthony Richardson, 8 games of Riley Leonard. Can you imagine if a team did that?
Every other week,
alternate
quarterbacks.
To be fair, I would. Hopefully, you would have the middle bye, and so
who you starting this week, Coach?
Yeah.
We'll work through that.
That sounds horrific. Now that I say that out loud.
Yeah, we'll work through that, and the starter will know who's starting.
Smoothly answer that.
This is from Jamie, and this is a good one because I think he's a really talented player in the NFL draft. Dane Brugler loves him. So does Daniel Jeremiah and a handful of other draft analysts. This is from Jamie. Draft D'Angelo Ponds and cut Kenny Moore? Is that a possibility?
Well, Eddie, if I could ask that to Dane Brugler, I think his first question might be, does he get to 47? D'Angelo Ponds. Is he getting to 47 overall? Our conversation with Dane, I believe, was on the morning when D'Angelo Ponds jumped whatever he did in the vertical.
43.5.
So, does that help out his lack of height in terms of solidifying him at the top of round 2? Just to play that out. So, but, again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I think when we were early in the offseason, Eddie, you and I had a segment where I just threw the 3 names at you. Pittman, Franklin, Moore. Is it a slam dunk? They're all back. Now, again, how can you get around the losses of those guys. Okay, well, if you get around Pittman, you're bringing back Pierce, whatever. You can draft a wideout, something, annually there seems to be a good amount of wideouts.
Mhm.
Franklin, obviously linebacker depth is a question, but you've drafted great there. And then at corner, you'd be banking a whole lot into Justin Wally. But again, you do have something.
I was interested.
That's intrigued
It
by
caught my ear. Ballard mentioned Jalen Carlisle.
He did. He did.
In the media scrum after the podium when you asked him about somebody asked him about linebacker.
Right. And he did mention Wally and Hunter Wohler
He did.
in terms of safety, just to kind of go over everybody there. So I don't. It's an interesting thought, Jamie. Now, I still think the front seven needs a good amount, but still, it is an interesting thought there that you would have.
Players that could get extended to kind of alleviate some of that cap for this year, Kevin, are, we've already said, Michael Pittman Jr., Quentin Nelson, and Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
Those are kind of like the big three.
Which, again, that gets you somewhere, but I don't know if it gets you all the way there.
Yep. And the final question on today's pod is from Luke. If Alec Pierce were to leave for another team in the first 24 to 48 hours of free agency, how desperate would that make the Colts when it comes to matching other offers for Daniel Jones? While it appears they have a ceiling on what they think he's worth based on opting for the transition tag instead of the franchise tag, I can't imagine the Colts would want the embarrassment of losing both players after assuring fans the urgency has never been higher to win in 2026. Do you think that they would match any possible offer if Pierce is already gone, or is there a chance that they'd actually let both leave?
I cannot see both. I mean, obviously, it would totally change up what you're working with this offseason. My guess is Jones is definitely back. Pierce, I think, is just truly up in the air. You got to have that agent's word, and that's a dangerous game to play. That is a dangerous game to play.
Yeah,
and
Dallas,
that's where I thought.
Go ahead.
That's where I thought the Bucs analogy earlier was really good. So again, in a vacuum, $37 million for Daniel Jones. We don't really think anyone likes our quarterback that much. That's kind of what the Colts are saying. I don't think they're necessarily that wrong in it. But again, there is some risk with the reward not being that big. That's what I want to stress. The reward is not the Pacers sitting there with a top 4 pick. It's not. It's really $6 million, which is, again, 2% of the cap. Given the Colts situation and all the things they need to do, maybe they view it that significantly.
Dallas just restructured Dak Prescott and Tyler Smith to open up $47 million.
That time of year. He is Eddie Garrison. I am Kevin Bowen, and we'll be back next week. We'll see. It'll be very, very fluid, but wanted to make sure we got this your way. Signing off, Colts Corner with myself, Kevin Bowen.